Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's great to stay up late. Good morning. Okay, Hare Krishna. We'll sing Jai Radha Madhava and commence Srimad Bhagavatam class. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijanna Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijanna Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Rajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijanna Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijanna Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatira Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Radhe Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai. Om Gyana Timirandasya Kananjana Shalaka. Oh, that's not the right one. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 25, text number 34. If I understand correctly. Ihadya santam atmanam vidhamana tataha param yaneyam nirmita vira purisharanam atmanaha ihadya santam atmanam vidhamana tataha param yaneyam nirmita vira purisharanam atmanaha ihadya santam atmanam vidhamana tataha param yaneyam nirmita vira purisharanam atmanaha. So the word for word translation is thus, iha, here, adya, today, santam, existing, atmanam, living entities, vidama, that much we know, na, not, tataha param, beyond that, yena, by whom, iyam, this, nirmita, created, vira, O great hero, puri, city, sharanam, resting place, atmanaha, of all living entities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Prabhupada ki jai. At least I think the translation is done by Prabhupada. I know that there are some sections, I think starting from the 5th canto, perhaps, where the verse translation was done by a different devotee. Perhaps Taraka Prabhu remembers and could tell us. But of course, all of it is confirmed, edited, and approved by Srila Prabhupada. So here it says, O great hero, we only know that we are existing in this place. We do not know what will come after. Indeed, we are so foolish that we do not care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. So this is the beautiful woman representing the Jiva's intelligence speaking, saying, we don't even know why we're here. What are we doing in this place? We only know that we are existing. We don't know what will come after. We're so foolish, we do not even care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. Purport: this lack of Krishna consciousness is called ignorance. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is called prabhavastavad apodajitaha. Everyone is born ignorant. The Bhagavatam therefore says that we are all born ignorant within this material world. In our ignorance, we may create nationalism, philanthropy, internationalism, science, philosophy, and so many other things. The basic principle behind all these is ignorance. What then is the value of all this advancement of knowledge if the basic principle is ignorance? Unless a person comes to Krishna consciousness, all of his activities are defeated. This human form of life is especially meant to dissipate ignorance, but without understanding how to dissipate ignorance, people are planning and building many things. After death, however, all of this is finished. Wow. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priya. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Vanchaka Bhatriyubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are so fortunate that Srila Prabhupada is pulling back the curtain of illusion and revealing, first of all, that we're in illusion, and secondly, that the reality is Krishna. Queen Kunti says that like an actor on a stage goes unrecognized, Krishna is behind this curtain of illusion. And one who's intelligent, or really one whose eyes have been opened by the spiritual master, can see. Maya javani kachanam agarokshajam avyayam nalakshase mudha drishta nato natyataro bhavaha. Queen Kunti says that there's a curtain of illusion, Maya javani kachanam. Just like on a stage, they have the big curtain that opens and closes, when the show is about to begin or when it's finishing or they're changing the act. You can't see past the curtain unless they open it for you. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. All we know is what is being shown to us, what we are allowed to see. So there's a curtain of illusion, and we are on the not so good side of that curtain. Because Mudha, Queen Kunti says, Mudha drisham, we're foolish. Even when the curtain is open and an actor appears on the stage, you don't understand what is the real character of that actor unless that actor reveals themselves. The actor is playing a role. The whole purpose of the role is to make you think they're someone that they're not. And they exhibit some drama, and they say some lines, and they get you to feel all sorts of emotions. But who is the person? Who is the actor? We don't know the actor. We only know what it is being shown to us. This is the analogy of Queen Kunti. Maya javani kachanam agarokshajam avyayam. She says that Adhokshaja Krishna cannot be perceived directly. The name Adhokshaja is actually a very interesting combination of a couple of words. Adha, aksha, and ja. That which makes your eyes go downwards. Adhokshaja. Adha aksha, of course, is the eyes. And adho, like adho tamisram, that verse. So that which makes your eyes go downwards is adhokshaja. And therefore it's translated as imperceptible. Or we cannot see directly. Just like the sun. You can't look at the sun directly. You try to look up in that direction. It kind of forces your eyes downwards. It's too bright. It's too strong. So similarly, the Lord is adhokshaja, imperceivable with our standard vision. But it can be perceived if he wants to show us, just like if the actor decides in the middle of the show to take off the costume and say, of ignorance given by Srila Prabhupada's purport. You're either Krishna conscious or you're not. That's the simple definition. Either you recognize, same old thing every day, says your internet connection is unstable. I feel like it just happens in the morning. Hold on 1 second, please, everybody. Okay, turned off something. Hopefully that's going to help. Maybe it's this internet service provider I have, and this is like high traffic in the mornings amongst my neighbors or something. Anyway, hopefully it'll stay together. So this is Prabhupada's simple definition of ignorance. Ignorance is simply you're Krishna conscious or you're not. You recognize that the origin of everything is Krishna, or you don't. Ignorance is an energy that we value so much. We cherish it and we appreciate it, because without ignorance, we cannot even hope to try to enjoy something in this world. As I discussed last week, avritam jnana metena jnanina nityavairina kamarupena kontea dushparena analena cha. That we depend on this material energy to cover up our knowledge. Avritam jnanam. It has to cover up our knowledge. We need this ignorance in order to try to enjoy, kama, our lusty desires. We cannot enjoy something unless we're forgetting about something else. You cannot get a new product, a new item, a new commodity, a new relationship. You cannot hope to enjoy that without forgetting the last one that you had. We depend on ignorance, even just to try to be happy in this world. We need this ignorant energy. If we are simultaneously conscious of our previous lives, then we cannot hope to enjoy this one. We have to forget about previous lives. We have to forget about previous lovers, previous situations that we were attached to. We just forget about all of them and jump into the next one. We depend upon ignorance. And so it's our favorite energy of the Lord. We might not like to admit it. If someone asks, what's your favorite energy of Krishna? We might say, oh, it's the kirtan energy. It's the prasadam energy. But actually, our favorite energy is the ignorance energy. What does he say? Matasmitir jnanam apohanam cha. From Krishna comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. That's actually our favorite one. Let's be honest. Maybe we forgot to tell the right answer, that we cherish forgetfulness more than anything else, because that's the prerequisite to enjoy in the material world. We have to forget previous lives, previous lovers, previous situations, and even forget the Lord, who is the controller of everything, who is the master of everything. It doesn't fit in with our selfish enjoyment program to remember that it's all facilitated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's why in this verse, the beautiful woman representing intelligence is saying, we're so foolish, we don't even care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. We don't even care. I don't even want to know. Try to get into that feeling. Try to think for a second. How often do I think like that? I might not say it explicitly. I don't pick up Bhagavatam and say, I don't want to know. No, we respect Bhagavatam. We revere it, bow down to it, might even read it sometimes. We never say explicitly, I don't want to know. I don't want to know who's in charge of everything, who's pulling the strings, who is the real Wizard of Oz. I don't want to know. We don't say it explicitly, but we think it a lot. We feel it a lot. I don't want to know. I don't want to be conscious of my dharma right now. I don't want to be conscious of my obligation. I don't want to be conscious of my mortality. I don't want to be conscious of my unlimited failures and enjoyment. I don't want to know right now. I want a little break from not knowing. I want a little break from knowing so that I can not know. We cherish that energy. We love it. We value it. It's so dear to us. And that's why we situate it quite squarely in the core of our heart, because it's one of the most precious things to us. Krishna actually says this. He recognizes this tendency of ours to cherish our ignorance. Right? Doesn't he? Isn't it true? It's at the end of the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in a verse which I'm going to remember at any moment now. Matasmitir jnanam apohanam cha. Let's see Krishna. Let's put Krishna to the test. Can I remember? Tasmad ajnana sambhutam kritstam jnanasinatmanaha chitvainam samkshayam yogam atishta bharataha. Krishna says, therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed with the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharat, stand and fight. It's very interesting. Tasmat ajnana sambhutam. What is born out of ajnana, ignorance? Samkshaya, doubt. Hritstam, it's standing in the heart. It's there deeply within our heart. And chitvainam samkshayam yogam. You have to cut that doubt with a knife, with a sword, Gyanasina, with the sword of knowledge. There's some powerful fighting words coming from Krishna. He likes fighting words. I noticed that's his style. Like there's different lyrical styles, politicians often use fighting words too, especially the nationalist types. Prabhupada said here in the purport, nationalism is one of the many types of ignorance. Nationalist types, they use a particular fighting words, Putin's doing it right now. He said you have to find the enemies of the state. They're not supporting us in our, whatever it is that he's trying to do. Find the enemies of the state, root them out. So Putin's taking a page from Krishna's handbook. Because this is what Krishna said at first. Chit vainam samkshayam yogam. You got to root out. But Krishna doesn't say root out your enemy in the form of some ethnic group. He doesn't say root out your enemy, who is the president. He says the enemy is the agyana, the samkshaya, the ignorance and the doubt. And you got to cut it out with the sword of knowledge. So hritstam, why is this ignorance situated in the heart? Because we love it. We love it. We love ignorance. It's actually like one of the biggest economies is the ignorance economy. Selling alcohol, selling distraction. It's a big part of modern human economy is to be able to sell someone the opportunity to be ignorant. We cherish it. That's why Krishna says it's there standing in the heart. Tasmad agyana sambhutam hritstam gyanasinatmanaha chitvainam samkshayam yogam atishta bharata. We value this ignorance because it's the prerequisite for trying to enjoy anything in this world. We got to first forget about our obligation. We got to forget about our previous lives. We got to forget about our previous lovers. We got to forget about what other people need and want. We got to forget all of that just to try to enjoy a little sliver of illusory happiness. We need that ignorance. It's like mother's milk. We cannot survive without it. And therefore, it's very dear to us. Therefore, it's our favorite energy of Krishna. That's my challenge to you. Think about what is your favorite energy of Krishna and be honest. Don't say it's the prasadam. Don't say it's the kirtan. It's actually the ignorance. It's the part we love the most. But we're trying to learn to love Krishna, of course. So perhaps you're at the stage where ignorance is no longer your favorite energy of Krishna. And to you, I bow down. So yeah, we got to get over this. And it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of guts to make that shift from dependence upon ignorance to dependence upon Krishna. It takes some serious, what should I say? Some courage, some moxie, some attitude, really, to be able to do that. Gyanasina, chitvainam, to take the sword of knowledge and just cut the ignorance out of your heart. I mean, that takes some serious cojones, if I may. If I may be slightly vulgar to see if everybody is awake in this Bhagavatam class, it takes some serious cojones to take the sword of knowledge and cut the ignorance out of your heart. We're talking about open heart surgery here. Thank you for laughing, Jiva Pandit. Hablas español. Because we cherish this ignorance so much, and because the process of cutting doubt and ignorance out of the heart is kind of intense, it takes some serious courage to do that. That's why Krishna is saying, atishta bharata. You got to get up and fight. Don't just lay there and wait for it to happen, Gurudev's supposed to make it all happen. I got his picture on the wall. I go to the Guru Puja. You got to make it happen. You got to take the sword of knowledge. You got to cut the ignorance out of the heart. That takes some serious courage. And what is that sword of knowledge? It quite explicitly is the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. It might not be shaped, with a hilt and a blade, but it's even more powerful and even more dangerous than any sword that can be manufactured by a blacksmith. The sword of knowledge cuts the ignorance out of the heart. So Krishna says, Atishta Tishta Bharata, you got to get up and fight, He recognizes it's a bit of a fight against the ignorant energy. It's a fight against our old habits of illusion. It is a fight. Krishna recognizes it. And therefore he supports anyone who tries. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti bhurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yanamamam payantite. He gives the knowledge and the intelligence by which we can come to him. So, he's in your ring. He's on your side of the ring in this fight. What is the saying? He's in your corner. We're in the ring, boxing it out with Maya, boxing it out with illusion. But we got Krishna in our corner. Rub on your shoulders, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. You can do it. And the spiritual master is helping us, our spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada, giving us all the tools necessary. Om Jnana Timirandasya, he's doing the eye surgery, the heart surgery. We got the whole thing going on, We are fully supported by a single-payer Medicare system of Lord Krishna. There is single-payer spiritual medical system. Krishna pays for it all. And, we just got to go and get into that, and get that open heart surgery going, get that eye surgery going, and fight. Otherwise, as Srila Prabhupada is saying here, everything else, the lack of Krishna consciousness, is called ignorance. Anything that we may do in this world, in this lifetime, or in any other lifetime, if it lacks an understanding of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then it is ignorance. It's simply ignorance of the truth. Naitach chitram bhagavati hyanante jagarishvare otam protam idam yasmin tantushvanga yatha pataha. Who said this? Was it Brahma that said this? It describes that the Lord, just like the threads of a fabric, go lengthwise and breadthwise. They go this way and that way on the X and Y axis. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is directly and indirectly within everything in this cosmic manifestation. And if we don't see it, then we're in ignorance. Just like when you look at a fabric, you look at a shirt or something, you don't see lines, you see a plane, you see a two-dimensional plane, but it's actually many lines woven together, many single threads woven together this way and that way, horizontally and vertically. And they're all woven together, but we don't see the threads. We just see the fabric. We see the two-dimensional plane. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is directly and indirectly within everything, but somehow we don't see him. That's our ignorance. Somehow we don't see, but we're learning to see by the grace of Srila Prabhupada and by the grace of Srimad Bhagavatam. But otherwise, everything is ignorance. Everyone is, let's read Prabhupada's here. How many times did he say ignorance in this purport? Like 10 times. It's only like 10 sentences. Everyone is born ignorant. The Bhagavatam therefore says that we are all born ignorant within this material world. In our ignorance, we may create nationalism. There you go. Certified by Srila Prabhupada to be ignorant. Nationalism. Because it's on the rise right now. It's kind of like coming back in style, You thought it went away after World War II. No. It's back. It's back in a big way. Nationalism, philanthropy. I don't know if anybody's doing philanthropy anymore. It seems like everyone's given up on philanthropy, except for the Hare Krishnas. They're the only ones still trying to do some charitable work in the world. That's not true. There are some philanthropic groups. But again, if it's not serving the spirit soul, then it's just like rescuing the dress of a drowning man. So Prabhupada says it's ignorance. Internationalism. There's this anti-nationalism idea of globalism, and that's also ignorance. We're also seeing the detrimental effects of that globalism, superpowers and super powerful individuals who have more wealth and more influence than we can even comprehend. That's the result of a few decades of not nationalism, but instead internationalism. So that's another type of ignorance. Science, philosophy, and so many other things. Of course, there's an abundance of ignorance in science, although they claim that it's the exact opposite. But there's a lot of ignorance in science. Maybe if I have some time, I'll talk about my favorite type of ignorance in science, which is Darwin's theory of evolution. There's a lot to be said about that, but I don't know if the devotees are interested. I could complain and offer some counter arguments to this dangerously ignorant theory. Dangerously ignorant. So Prabhupada says the basic principle behind all these things is ignorance, ignoring the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's what ignorance is. Let us make an idea about how to solve the problems of life or how to attain some artha, kama, some wealth or some sense gratification, but let's just ignore the fact that someone created all of this. We do not even care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residence. We just want to ignore that. So the basic principle behind all of these is ignorance. Let me ignore Krishna. What then is the value of all of this advancement of knowledge if the basic principle is ignorance? So we have a very advanced civilization, as far as we can tell. Technologically, it's advanced. Prabhupada talk about how we're advanced in technology, but so ignorant. I got to give an example of advancement in technology. As I was talking about with Venu Madhurya and Leela Madhurya, Prabhu's, when I drove him to the airport, we were driving in the Tesla, and everyone's a little fascinated with the Tesla. It's pretty interesting, advanced technology. And it's got this system by which it can drive automatically on the road. It's got all these cameras on the side, radars and stuff. And so you can turn on its autopilot feature and it just drives by itself, which is kind of fun. It's nice if you're going long distance, helps with driving fatigue. But, there's all these security features because Tesla doesn't want to be responsible for anybody dying. And at least they don't want to get sued. So there's also an internal in-cabin camera that looks directly at the passengers, and it has an eye tracking feature. So the internal camera can tell if the driver is looking forward at the road. If you start looking away or close your eyes or whatever, then the camera will recognize it and it'll turn off the autopilot feature. So this is very advanced technology. It's pretty phenomenal that they can make all this stuff happen in this vehicle. So what I do is I have a little receipt from buying something, and I just kind of slip it in to the little crease in the ceiling panel, just so that it's covering that camera. So I cover the camera, and then the autopilot feature works, and it doesn't know if I'm looking at the road anymore. So I always thought that's a really good example of Maya Prahita Jnana. There's so much advancement in technology. I mean, there's really advanced technology in this vehicle, and it's flying down the road at 90 miles per hour. And all I have to do is put a little something to cover the camera, and then I bested the machine and living dangerously. So that's kind of analogous of our modern society. We have all this advanced technology, but we're so blind. Humanity in general, we're so blind that even just simple, stupid little thing can put us at great risk. So Prabhupada says, what's the value of all this advancement of knowledge if the basic principle is ignorance? Unless a person comes to Krishna consciousness, all of his activities are defeated. The human form of life is especially meant to dissipate ignorance. But without understanding how to dissipate ignorance, people are planning and building many things. So humans are meant to dissipate ignorance, dissolve it, eliminate that illusion. But we have some powerful forces that are creating more. They're broadcasting ignorance very loudly, a lot louder than the devotees are broadcasting Krishna consciousness, unfortunately. They've got some serious broadcasting power. Some literally have like groups that they pay to broadcast their ignorance. Some imitation gurus, I'm not going to throw any names out there, but some they actually pay lots of money to have social media presence, whole teams to create their media presence and whatnot, sort of things that devotees should have been doing decades ago, but we haven't done so well. That's why certain figures just suddenly become very popular on social media. It's not because they actually have some really interesting information, some unique perspective. It's because they paid a lot of money to have a social media team, marketing teams. So they're broadcasting ignorance. We're trying to dissipate it one book at a time, slowly but surely. But there are some entities who are broadcasting ignorance very loudly, very successfully. And I dare say that we are not winning that battle. Well, we're winning some battles. We're not winning the war, but we're winning a few battles. Some individuals are coming to Krishna consciousness. That's what matters. So we have to get over this ignorance. We value the energy. We love it. We cherish it. But Krishna says, you got to get up and fight. Atishta tishta bharata, with the sword of knowledge. Cut the ignorance out of the heart. Let's not be willfully naive, like is described in this verse. The beautiful woman representing intelligence says, I don't even care to understand who has created this beautiful place. Recognize that sometimes we think like that. I don't even want to know. I don't care to understand who has created this beautiful place for our residents. Let's recognize we have that tendency. And let's cut it out. Like our parents used to say to us when we were children, when you're getting naughty, running around, hey, cut it out. Cut it out, you. So Krishna's saying, Chitvainam, cut it out. Cut out this ignorance. It's childish. It's childish. I'm going to finish there and ask if there are any thoughts or comments, particularly from His Grace Srimad Taraka Prabhu, who's honored. I'm honored that he's here listening. I'm sure you'd have something that he'd like to add or say. Otherwise, I will go on a long, blistering tirade against Darwin's theory of evolution, since Prabhupada mentioned the ignorance of science in this purport. But first, I'd love to hear from Taraka Prabhu if you'd like to add something. Prabhu. Are you able to unmute yourself? I don't know what your mobility is here. Hare Krishna.
Right. Experiencing some technical difficulty. To begin, there's so many things. Ignorance is a fundamental component of material life because in order to attempt to enjoy material life, we are means independence from Krishna. We can't act independently within the realm of spiritual nature. So material world is the place which is created for those who want to try to act independently of Krishna and to try to enjoy the position of Krishna. They want to try to be the enjoyer. So that requires creating massive illusion where it is riding on machines created of the material nature. And in ignorance, we think that flesh and bones, this is me, right? We identify material elements, we think that's ourselves, and then it becomes extended. I drive around in my Tesla and I think I am this Tesla. But he hits my car and bashes in my quarter panel and you yell, you rascal, you hit me. The illusion of Maya depends upon ignorance, forgetfulness of who we really are, that we are spiritual entities. We have nothing to do with the material nature. We're not these bodies. We are Nitya Krishna Das. We're always servants of Krishna. Ignorance is foundational to material existence. Srila Prabhupada makes reference in his purport to the fifth canto. Took a quick look at that to see what he said there. It's fifth canto, chapter 5, text 5.
It's spoken by Rishabdev.
Yes. He says, as long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subjected to miseries arising from ignorance, be it sinful or pious. Karma has its result in actions. If a person is engaged in any kind of karma, his mind is called karmatmaka, colored with fruitive activity. As long as the mind is impure, consciousness is unclear, and as long as one is absorbed in fruitive activity, he has to accept a material body. Srila Prabhupada has described elsewhere that there's one lecture in particular, I can't recall exactly when and where that was, but he explained that suffering is the result of ignorance. And it's true on many, many levels, but and he gave a whole bunch of examples of how all of our suffering is the result of ignorance. And the way to mitigate suffering is cultivation of knowledge. A person commits sinful activity due to ignorance, and they suffer the reactions of those sinful activities. But all due to ignorance. If they were actually in knowledge, if they understood what to do and what not to do and why, they would be disinclined to engage themselves in that activity, and the concomitant suffering would not be there. So there's that. What else? Krishna, of course, describes in Bhagavad Gita what constitutes knowledge and what constitutes ignorance. What is that? Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, beginning with text 8.
Chapter 13, text number 8. Yeah.
8 through 12. So he rattles off a list of items which he says constitute knowledge, and everything else is ignorance. So he says humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, it's ignorance. So another angle of vision, we can understand what constitutes ignorance if it doesn't fall into one of these categories. What else did I have on my mind? You talked about nationalism, globalism.
Prabhupada mentioned it in the purport. Yes, nationalism, yes. Internationalism.
Yes, he made yeah, right. He made reference to it. And he does it all over the place. Talks about socialism, thisism, thatism, communism, nationalism, all mistakes. In the Nectar Devotion, I guess it's in the preface, Srila Prabhupada describes the expression of the loving propensity that we begin. How does he say it? Here it is. In the primary stage, a child loves his parents, then his brothers and sisters. And as he daily grows up, he begins to love his family, society, community, country, nation, or even the whole human society. So nationalism here, or even globalism, here he's describing them as stages of progress in the development of the loving propensity. But he says the loving propensity is not satisfied even by loving all of human society. That loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the supreme beloved. Our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed in Krishna. This theme is the sum and substance of the nectar devotion. It teaches us how to love Krishna in 5 different transcendental mellows. So, Prabhupada derides the consciousness of nationalism, or even globalism, or every ism. Actually, every ism should have Prabhupada besides every ism, but here it's presented as like an evolutionary stage. So in trying to propagate Krishna consciousness, when we're discussing, I guess, whatever issues someone is preoccupied with, trying to create some common ground, trying to find a way to relate to them in a way that they can understand. You can find people easily, especially tuning out to county. You can find lots of people who are the nationalist idea. Well, this is a mistake. It's a kind of sectarianism, but we can encourage them, of this comments from Srila Prabhupada, to understand their own loving propensity and how it develops. You can explain to them that this is your situation. You're situated at this particular point on this evolutionary scale of the development of your loving propensity, but it's not going to satisfy you. Be satisfied until we love Krishna. And part of the reason for that is that only Krishna can perfectly reciprocate your loving propensity. Be satisfied by loving your country, or even loving the whole society at large. But from a Krishna conscious perspective, that evolution of the loving propensity is a question. Encourage people to learn to love, beginning with their family, but then to expand that. Loving your country is nice. Then you can learn to love other countries as well, and even just all of human society, but then animal society as well, and plant society and insect society, all living entities. They're all Krishna's parts and parcels. We want to love all of them. Learn to love Krishna, then you will automatically love all of his parts and parcels. If I like blueberry pie, I'll also like a slice of blueberry pie. And so our approach, the blacksmith approach, is in one fell swoop. By cultivating our love for Krishna, we automatically develop our love for every living entity, all of Krishna's parts and parcels. You can't love Krishna and not also love his parts and parcels. Just like I can't love blueberry pie and not like a slice of blueberry pie. It's part and parcel. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts. I'm a little foggy.
You sound clear to me, Prabhu. Sounds
yeah,
like
which is a great source of frustration to me. I look okay and I sound okay, but I'm not okay. And so people expect things of me that are unreasonable because, they don't know what it's like inside here. It's bodily things are not good. Things are breaking down, and I don't expect them to get better. They're going to get worse. I can check out at any moment, but I'm ecstatic in spite of it all.
I can see that.
I'm struggling just to try to chant a few rounds, but they're the most wonderful rounds I've ever chanted. I'll say a few words about that, I guess.
Tell us a little bit about coming to the end, or about ecstatic chanting.
People in general are they live in dread of material demise. Of course, they're frightened of what it may mean. They're terrified of being torn away from attachments at once. They don't want to be separated from loved ones. They don't want their activities of enjoyment to be interrupted. They don't like their routine to be disrupted. Frightened of what the future may hold. Is there a heaven or certainty? Is there a God? Do I have to answer for all of my nonsense? Myself, I experienced some apprehension initially because I've made all mistakes in life. I've been offensive at times, and it has been a source of grave concern for me. Where up at practical reality of how these things work. Krishna explains that whatever state of being you remember at the time of death, to that you will attain without fail. Well, we spend our lives in Krishna consciousness trying to prepare ourselves for that moment, trying to remember Krishna at the time of death. But aware of the fact that claims that at every moment of our lives we are creating our next birth. The way that works is that your subtle body is gathering impressions constantly of everything that you're experiencing. As long as you're in contact with the material nature, at every moment, your mind is recording impressions. Mind is subtle body. So those impressions are indelibly recorded. They remain there. And it is the subtle body that affects the transfer of the soul from one body to the next. So you leave your gross body, subtle body remains with you, and subtle body is full of impressions. It's full of desires that have arisen as a result of contact with the material nature. We've been contemplating various things. Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita the progression of attachments from Yayato Vishayam Pumsa Sangastation Vijayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kama Krodo Vijayate. So, and then Krodat Bhavati Samoha, Samoha could be Vibhrama, and so on. So it begins with contemplation. We contemplate the objects of the senses, and then from that attachment develops lust, and so on, the whole progression until eventually you fall down to the material pool. But so desires arise as a result of, lust develops as a result of contemplation. We're constantly contemplating all kinds of things with the scope of material nature. We're planting seeds of desire. They don't necessarily fructify immediately. The body in a seed form, and at some point they germinate and develop from there. So you leave your gross body, and then based upon the desires that you've been cultivating, actually for lifetimes, various desires arise. There is a stage at which between bodies, you're presented with options. You have, there's all the material universe's innumerable bodily forms, so many wombs that you can enter, so many opportunities to accept another material body. Based upon the particular set of desires that you've accumulated in your subtle body, you are attracted to a particular womb that will ultimately afford you the opportunity to satisfy those desires. You actually can see how that particular bodily form, how its life will play out, and the opportunities that it affords. So you are compelled to accept that material body, and it's irresistible. You may not really, on one level, you may not want to accept, but you're forced to accept. You have to do it. So the subtle body carries us from one body to the next, and at every moment we're creating our next body by creating impressions in our subtle body. And this is why it's so very important to remain in Krishna consciousness all the time. If we want to give direction to our life, and we don't want to have to accept an unfavorable birth, because we can go, it's a two-way street. That it's a two-lane highway. There's one going north and one south. So you can go in either direction. You can accept birth in the animal species, which Krishna describes as the most dangerous type of fear. It's a worse situation. You drop into the animal species, and then there's no opportunity to elevate yourself. You have to progress downward through the entire set of animal species to the very bottom, and then you come back up again before you get another opportunity to get human birth. So very bad situation. And animal life is miserable. People think, well, why would it be so bad? I think my dog lives pretty well. But generally speaking, animal life is quite miserable. One living entity is food for another. Animals, when they predate one another, they don't kill humanely. We'll say, it's brutal. It's horrifying. One living entity eats another living entity while it is alive. It's a horrible, horrible thing. To detail, you get the idea. When a spider captures an insect and then injects a venom into it with its fangs, this is the stuff of horror movies, right? You see some horror movie, there's this gigantic monster, horrible creature that grabs you and devours you. That venom, by the way, is excruciatingly painful. Then if you can imagine the pain of a bee sting.
I got bit by one venomous spider at Gita Nagari recently.
What if you were, very, very tiny and the same amount of venom, just, unimaginable, your entire bloodstream filled with that stinging venom, and then you are digested from the inside out. So the animal species, very fearful condition. We don't want to fall into the animal species. Once that happens, you're trapped there and there's no hope for escape until after millions of births, you get an opportunity for human life again. So human life is extremely precious and we don't want to waste the opportunity. It's very, very extremely important. The human species are, only 400,000 out of all the many species. And this majority of all living entities are not in the human species, and we can join them. So we have to be very, very serious. So in my own life, I've had apprehensions throughout most of my Krishna conscious life, but I'll say that in the past several days, for whatever reason, I have gotten assurances that my future is very bright. In spite of struggling, trying to chant, and it's become very, very difficult to chant Hare Krishna. I don't have the strength. It's exhausting. It's hard for me to breathe. My heart's not getting enough oxygen, but lots of encouragement. Dropping bits. I'm having time remembering. It was on my mind previously, but
I'm envious of you, Prabhu.
Excuse me?
I said I'm envious of you, and I think that your life and your situation is glorious.
Don't be envious. Not a good condition.
Okay, then I'm
But
transcendentally jealous.
I've been receiving lots of prayers, lots of prayers from devotees coming from all over. Incredible flood of prayers. It's amazing. Prayers are very powerful. Krishna hears every word, always. And one thing that I can say with certainty now is that I have definitely gotten Krishna's attention, and he's made that very clear. And I also have assurances that my future is bright. And so I'm ecstatic and feeling enlivened and enthused. I feel apprehensive about the future. Peaceful. I'm understanding now that Krishna is Suhrit, the dearmost friend, the best friend. No one can be a better friend than Krishna. And Krishna is revealing himself to be the best of friends. I'll tell you, we're going kind of overtime, but if you're interested, I'll tell you a little story. In somewhere around, it's probably November in 1973, visiting the temple in New York in Brooklyn Street. There was a Mataji named, there still is a Mataji named, she's now living in Vrindavan. She manages the wonderful, wonderful devotee, incredibly empowered book distributor, get immense volumes of Lakshmi. She was responsible for bringing Devamrita Swami to Krishna
Daivi
consciousness.
Shakti Mataji. Daivi
Yes,
Shakti.
yes, he and I both were recipients of the
Oh,
mercy of
she snagged you too.
Oh, yes. I would go to. She would situate herself strategically inside the front door of the temple in here, and there was a radiator there with a cover. She had stacks of books there, and she would shake everyone down that came in the door and load them up with books. And every week she would get my entire paycheck, and frequently I would have to beg her at the end of the evening. I would have to beg her for a few dollars so that I could get gas to get back home. But so on one occasion I was visiting, and she was talking about the fact that Srila Prabhupada had recently visited, and unfortunately I missed it. I wasn't aware that he was coming. And she said, Srila Prabhupada said that if you turn one screw for Krishna, he will remember you forever. Those words struck me. I was never able to forget that. And to this day, it echoes in my mind all the time. So that the concept was exciting to me. I thought, wow, this is great to be remembered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What an extraordinary thing. So I thought, all right, let me turn lots of screws for Krishna. And I started taking up whatever service I could find, pots and washing floors and doing the devotees' laundry and so on. I eventually moved into the temple and did all kinds of. So I've been turning screws everywhere I can, big screws, little screws, all kinds of screws at every opportunity for 50 years. And most of the screws that I've turned, I can't remember. But recently, Krishna remembers, and he's shown that to me, that he remembers. And not only does he remember every screw that we've turned, he reciprocates all of those activities in the most wonderful ways. So who can do that? Krishna is the best of friends. Is that Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, right? It's the well-wishing friend of all living entities. But the word Suhrit is used, which is a special kind of friend. Srila Prabhupada explains there are all different kinds of friends. Some are more intimate than others. But the best of all friends, the topmost friend, the dearmost friend, is described as Suhrit. So that's Krishna, the dearmost friend of all. So my practical realization now is that Krishna is your most friend, and remembers everything, every little detail, not just the actions that we took, but our thoughts. Even we had the intention of turning a screw, but didn't actually turn it. Krishna appreciates the fact that we wanted to turn the screw. We had a plan to turn the screw, whatever it was. He remembers all of those things, and he greatly appreciates every little thing. Is more appreciative of our service than Krishna. He appreciates everything. He's aware of everything, and he appreciates everything. Nobody else is aware of all the things that we do. We're friend, and we may think of them all the time, but unless we inform them of what we've done or show them somehow practically what we've done, they are of all of we've done or our sentiment. Krishna's not like that. He's always aware of everything that we've done. When we speak his name, when we take the time to hear words spoken about him, all those things he is aware of, and he appreciates it very, very greatly, and he reciprocates all of it. Sometimes not immediately, but He remembers everything and he reciprocates everything. So it's a wonderful thing. Hare Krishna. All right. You're giving me the hook. I'm going to shut up.
Sounds like Guru Puja at the beginning. But Prabhu, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your feelings and your experiences. They're very valuable to us. And I appreciate it so much. I hope that we'll get to hear so much more.
For those who have not, who are not yet ready to leave their body, you're in for a special treat. It's not a terrible process. It's a wonderful process for devotees.
Thank you for that reassurance. Hare Krishna. Devaki, you want to say something? And then we should hear.
Thank you so much, Uncle Taraka. I'm so grateful I got to hear from you today. Thank you so much.
All right.
And thank you, Yasodeva, for your class. Thank you, Yasodeva.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Taraka Prabhu ki jai, Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare.